Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Well, boy, oh boy, do we have some news today. I suppose it's good timing. We're going to have to go through the 49ers roster. Today is the day to do that, and we're going to have to do that anyways because we're going to have to learn a little bit about some backups. Breaking news. We'll get into this a little bit more in depth in a little bit because we got some other NFL stuff, but let's go ahead and not bury the lead. Final injury report. As we reported, or basically knew was going to happen, Jair and Edgerrin Cooper are officially out. Colby Wooden is questionable. I'm not going to pretend that's not a big deal. I think not having Edgerrin does make the linebacking group a little bit weaker, and I think we've learned by now that not having Jair makes our defense significantly weaker. Colby Wooden, Kenny Clark, Josh Jacobs, Elton Jenkins, Josh Myers, Rasheed Walker, Evan Williams, all good to go. In fact, all of them were full participants except for Josh Jacobs, who was limited. So everybody should be ready to rock and roll. The really big news, though, is not the Green Bay Packers. It is the 49ers. We've been looking at a few guys that have not been participating. Specifically on Wednesday, Tatum Bethune, Nick Bosa, Kevin Givens, Christian McCaffrey, and Trent Williams did not participate. And so there was kind of, that's a big list. Well, the list just got a lot bigger. In fact, 3, 4, 5, 6 people did not participate on Friday. An additional 2 were limited. Let's go through this because you probably know the 2 big ones, but let's go through all of it. Mr. Tatum Bethune, which again, we'll get into how relevant these guys actually are. Linebacker, did not participate all week with a knee injury. He is officially listed as out. Kevin Givens, defensive tackle, groin injury, did not participate in practice all week. He is officially listed as out. Trent Williams did not participate all week and is listed as questionable. So there is still an outside chance here that Trent Williams, their all-pro left tackle, future frickin' Hall of Famer, certainly injured, certainly going to be hampered by the fact he had no practice all week, may not play in this game. If he doesn't, that is massive. John Feliciano has been limited all week. He is also questionable, so we will have to see if he ends up playing. He is a guard for the 49ers. Another guy that's been a really big one that we've been keeping an eye on, Nick Bosa, hip and oblique injury, did not participate all week. He is officially listed as out. That is massive. If you think losing Jair is a big hit to your defense, imagine losing maybe the best pass rusher in football. In fact, I think the Lions actually lost the best pass rusher in football. Nick Bosa, probably the next man up, disputably, but still, he is officially out for this game. But that's not all. Jacob Cowing, wide receiver with a concussion, was limited on Wednesday, did not participate on Thursday and Friday, and is now officially listed as out. We talked a little bit yesterday about Brock Purdy. He was limited Wednesday and Thursday, kind of a weird thing where he took himself out of practice. He wasn't throwing. Very strange. Did not participate on Friday. He is officially listed as out with a right shoulder injury. Obviously, unbelievably massive to not have Brock Purdy in this game. But that's still not all. Charvarius Ward, their cornerback, limited all week, but it doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is he is out with a non-injury related personal matter. So George Kittle is back. He was limited, full, and he is playing. So, that sucks. Christian McCaffrey, still back. I think he returned last week. He's ready to rock and roll. So they got 2 massive weapons back, but they have linebacker Bethune out, Bosa out, Givens, the defensive tackle, is out. Trent Williams, their left tackle, is questionable. Jacob Cowing, wide receiver, is out. John Feliciano, guard, is questionable. Brock Purdy, quarterback, is out, and Charvarius Ward, cornerback, is out. There are 6 players that are out in this game. 2 of them, who are starting offensive linemen, are questionable to play. This is beyond catastrophic. This is a team that is on the verge of being booted out of the playoffs. I mean, they're not out of it if they lose, but they are in rough shape. Like I said, they're sub 20% to make the playoffs. And it may be even worse depending on other games and who ends up winning or whatever the case may be, right? Vikings, Packers, Washington, if they win, that makes it harder for everybody on the outside. If Seattle wins, they're obviously up against Seattle. Arizona, all these teams, if they end up winning and we beat the 49ers, they may be sub 10% to make the playoffs, falling to 5-6. Coming off a loss to Seattle, now having to go on the road with some of your biggest players out in this game, playing very banged up, very demoralized, having people calling for the firing of your head coach. I mean, this is bad. Now, granted, this might sound familiar because this is exactly the conversation we had last week. I do think this is slightly different because we're not really talking about a different offensive play caller. We're not talking about a coaching change. We're just talking about a team that's been kicked between the legs repeatedly. And the only kind of twist is the fact that we've got a new quarterback and he's kind of an unscouted quarterback. But other than that, it's the same team, just significantly less efficient. Now, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because as Ken Ingalls posted on social media, he said, I've been watching the Packers lose to teams quarterbacked by Daniel Jones, Zach Wilson, Tyler Heineke, Ryan Tannehill, Desmond Ridder, Jimmy Garoppolo, Kenny Pickett, and Tommy DeVito over the last 2 seasons. I'm not discounting a Shanahan-led team, regardless of their starting quarterback. That's obviously the case, but let's be also very honest. There was I shouldn't say not one, because some of those, I don't remember the exact circumstances. For all intents and purposes, there was not one of these, with the exception of Garoppolo, I guess, because he was fine with San Francisco, and he was a starter or whatever. Let's just say, for example, in the case of Tommy DeVito, that was a complete implosion. And it had more to do with the Packers than it did with, hey, these guys really showed out. Although they did really play well. What the heck is that? I mean, on one hand, you want to be mad at your defense for not playing well. But on the other hand, I mean, these guys legitimately, we always say like, oh, we made them look like Tom Brady out there. Yeah, but they still had to complete the passes. Like, what is it about playing the Packers that all of a sudden it's just like, dang, man, it's just flicking off my wrist here. And then let's look at it's just freaking magnetic. I just launch it in the air, and it's got, like, homing capabilities. It just goes right into my wide receiver's arms. I don't know. At the end of the day, it's right there for the taking, folks, okay? Right there for the taking. But we'll get into the roster and all that kind of stuff in just a minute. Want to talk about a few things here. First off, I know they are irrelevant to us, but we got to talk about the Giants because this is the craziest freaking thing. This is more interesting than what's going on with the Jets right now, which is saying a whole lot. So we mentioned the fiasco with the Giants taking their starting quarterback, making him the third-string quarterback, right? There's a reason for that, but it's still kind of a real big slap in the face to a guy that's been a starting quarterback. It also makes you look like a complete jagoff because you just paid the guy a year ago. 1 year ago. Lots of money. And everybody called you stupid. Turns out they were all probably right. In fact, not probably, definitely. Well, then there were reports that he's out there running with the scout team as a safety. Why? Why are you doing that? First of all, I can't help but believe, like I've said before, at some point, a conspiracy theory, when it starts to make more sense than any other alternative, I don't know if we call it a conspiracy theory anymore. Do you just hate the guy? You must just hate him. You took his job away from him, benched him, made him the number 3. You also pissed off your number 2 guy because you took the number 3 and made him number 1 and apparently offered up no explanation as to why you did that. Just a big middle finger to your number 1 and your number 2 while you let, Tony Gabagool over here rule the show. Trying to sell jerseys or something, I don't know. But now you have your number 1 quarterback. You have the freaking audacity to go up to the guy and not only tell him, hey, since you're number 3, you're running scout team. Oh, but by the way, not as a quarterback. Doesn't the scout team need a quarterback? Yeah, you're okay. We're a little short at safety, and I want you, of all people. Why are you doing that? Beyond that. The biggest reason, apparently, that they were made the number 3 quarterback is because we don't want him to get injured, because if he gets injured, we're screwed and have to pay him a ton of money next year. We don't want to do that. So why are you doing this? Why is he out on the field running around as a safety? He should be doing nothing. And if he's going to do something, he should be wearing a red jersey and just standing there throwing footballs around. That's it. Very low impact, almost no risk of being injured. Why is he playing as a safety in practice? You absolute freaking morons. Well, then they just said, screw it, and they cut him. It's actually interesting. The Ari Mirov tweeted this out. He said, the Giants had Daniel Jones playing scout team safety at one point during practice today, according to local media on the scene. At this point, they may as well release him. He's doing what he's told, which deserves kudos, but come on. And that's exactly right. Come on. And really, I don't know that this changes anything financially. So you know you're already going to cut the guy. Why would you drag him along just to frickin' embarrass him? Why would you make him the number 3 quarterback, then make him a scout team safety before you end up cutting him anyways? Why not just bring him into your office and say we're going to go in a different direction? Heck, you probably could have even traded the frickin' guy for something. Maybe not with the contract, probably not, but I mean, how incompetent and stupid are these frickin' people? I don't understand this. It's like, well, we don't want him to get hurt because we're going to cut him. And if he gets hurt, then we have to pay him this amount of money. You know how you can make sure that he doesn't get hurt on your watch? Frickin' cut him. Unbelievable. I don't know what's going on in New Jersey, dude, but like Jersey Mike and all you guys are great, but I don't know if it's all the frickin' smog in the air. Those people are stupid. Is that just how it is down there? Over there, I guess? Kind of down a little bit into the side for me. Way to the side. Is everybody just an idiot in New Jersey? I hope not, because our entire defensive coaching staff is staffed by New Jersey guys, but what is going on out there? Dumbest frickin' people. Doesn't help that the only other thing that people know about New Jersey is Jersey Shore, and it's like, yep, they're all idiots. Every single one. Also, I need to take a pretty big victory lap here. I spent the better part of the last 48 hours arguing with Bears fans. Haven't been arguing much because, they tended to agree with everything, but they decided to plant their flag on this frickin' penalty thing. I argued with every single Bears fan in existence that by the rules, and I spent way too much time actually reading the rules, and that doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but try to find this stuff. It's not as laid out as commonsensically as you would think. To actually find these specific rules that are kind of spread all over the rule book took a lot of time. But the bottom line is I read it and I said, I don't see any penalties. And even if you could claim that there was, unbelievably ticky-tack penalties. I don't know if I mentioned it, but the funny thing about it is, even if there was a penalty on this play, the bottom line is, first of all, nobody knew the freaking rule. Everybody thought you weren't allowed to hit the long snapper, which is not a rule. So everybody just made up a rule, and then they made up a bunch of other rules. Well, you can't hit him within 1 second. That's fake. You can't touch him at all. That's fake. You can't hit him until he lifts his head. That's fake. All this crap is stupid and made up. Nowhere in the rule book at all. And so the bottom line is, what did people do? They started finding other issues. Well, I think that 93 actually had his hand on the long snapper and pushed off. Well, how do you know? You can't even see his hand. How do you know it's on him? And if it is on him, how do you know he's using that to push off? You don't. Well, Lucas Van Ness ended up behind people, and so he was pushing. Was that by design? No. Okay, so he was just following behind people. Yeah. Okay, was he actually pushing? And if he was, like, at the very end, did it have any impact? I mean, this is really, really ticky-tack bullcrap. But because everybody just didn't know the rules and then started trying to find any other rule violation in there, it would be essentially like, let's say the Packers won on a Hail Mary pass, and everybody thought that there was a rule that you can't, like, box out on a Hail Mary. Turns out that wasn't the case, and so people start going back and trying to find, like, well, look, this right tackle's arm is hooked over him. That should technically be a hold, and they're just trying to find any little bull crap in there to say that it was some kind of rule violation. And you know what? Even after a bunch of referees sat around and looked at it, they said, no, there's no rule violation here. None. Zero. Zippo. They didn't do anything wrong. All they did was push really hard, and your entire offensive line, 5 different people, ended up on the ground. That's why it got blocked. Also, your coach decided not to run another play, so he decided to make it a 46-yard field goal when it didn't need to be that long. So it kind of lowered the trajectory of the kick because it's a little bit of a longer kick. So that made it a little bit easier to block. And, again, your entire offensive line is made up of people that suck. And that's what happened. But no, you spent an entire week saying that you got screwed by the refs when really that didn't happen. You just didn't know the rules. And then you pretended that you did know the rules, but maybe it's just not that rule. It's a different rule. You don't know what you're talking about. You tried to catch the Packers on 3 different rules that it took you a week to figure out what the rules even were because you just kept making crap up. But we settled on 3 different rules that we thought were violated, and 0 of them were actually violated. It was a clean play. It was a beautiful play, and shame on everybody from Pat McAfee to Bears fans to every frickin' jag-off national media person that decided to come out and say that the Packers actually blocked this kick by violating some kind of a rule when they didn't. So it'd be nice if they can come out and apologize and say, actually, turns out I was wrong, great play by the Packers. That won't happen, but it sure would be nice. Why don't we take a break, and we'll come back and actually start digging into this 49ers game. We'll be right back. All right, so let's get started looking at the 49ers, and right out of the gate, we got to start with quarterback, and it's not going to be Brock Purdy. And listen, I know there is an absolute refusal by some people to admit that this guy's a good quarterback. I don't know why. I don't know what it's going to take for people to just accept that that's what it is, but that's what it is. That's a good thing, by the way. It's a good thing that Brock Purdy is a good quarterback and not playing. If it wasn't true, then it wouldn't really make much of a difference. But he is. He's doing a very good job. He is top of most categories, as he is every single year that he's been in the NFL. Let's just look at his grades here really quickly. 7th-round pick, who has had a 78, 87, and this year 81 PFF grades. He's never been anything but good. Even as a rookie, he was nearly an 80 PFF grade. If this dude's not good, Jordan Love's never been good. But anyways, he's not playing. And so in his place, we're going to have Brandon Allen. Brandon Allen has not thrown a single pass for the 49ers this year. I believe he's taken 1 knee in week 1 against the Jets. Just so we're all up to date on Brandon Allen, he was a 6th-round pick by the Jaguars in 2016. He got his first actual start in 2019. It's the first time he was ever put on a football field. That was for the Denver Broncos. He came in. He had 39 completions on 84 attempts. If you're really good with math, you can figure out that's a 46.4% completion rate. That's pretty bad. He had a 48.7 PFF grade. Then in 2020, he went to Cincinnati. Immediately ended up having to play some games there. 155 dropbacks. We won't go through everything, but he ended with a 56 grade. 2021 Cincinnati, just 38 dropbacks, 42 PFF grade. And then in 2022 Cincinnati, 4 dropbacks. He was 3 for 3 for 22 yards, so he ended up with a 75 PFF grade. So looks pretty good for those 3 passes. For his career, 56.7% completion rate, 1,600 yards, 6.1 yards per attempt. Brock Purdy, by the way, is 8.5, so that's quite a bit lower. Let's put them side by side so I can compare these here. 10 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. He had a 2.8 big-time throw rate. Brock Purdy was 4.3. Brandon Allen's career turnover-worthy play rate is 4.1%. Brock Purdy is 2.6%. So it's almost reversed. If you take Brock Purdy's big-time throw rate and turnover-worthy play rate and swap them, that's Brandon Allen. Adjusted completion percentage for Brock Purdy is 74%. It's 66% for Brandon Allen. Purdy this year has a 95.9, 96 passer rating. Brandon Allen's career passer rating is 78. Also, just because I'm curious, there's this whole fear of what about that first time that he comes out? Is he because nobody knows, whatever. 2021, his only start was week 18 against Cleveland. He had a 41 PFF grade, 42 passing grade. In 2020, his first start was week 12 against the Giants. He had a 50 PFF grade and a 51 passing grade. In 2019, his first start was week 9. He had a 59 grade, 56 passing grade. And that's it. He did, however, and this is the thing that scares the crap out of me, he had one game in his entire career that was good, and it was really good. 2020, Week 16, Houston Texans. He is 29 of 37 for 371 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 91 PFF grade, 91.4 passing grade. His grades that year were 50, 30, 60, 90, 20. Please don't let us be that 90. But again, he is a terrible quarterback who's only ever really been terrible. Every time his first game that he played was always terrible. He's had one good game. It was great, but one good game in his entire career since 2016. I don't know what else to say. Obviously, he's an NFL quarterback, but, he's going to be able to do very simple things. I mean, high school quarterbacks can throw to wide open guys when they're not under pressure, right? That's a thing that can happen. Here's a couple little notes about Brandon Allen, though. Some of the downsides of him. Allen has a quick release and can be accurate on intermediate passes, particularly when leading receivers into space. However, his accuracy can be spotty, especially when throwing to his left or the wide side of the field. There is a tendency for his velocity to dip on throws to the far hash. He tends to look to run rather than stand in under pressure. Struggles to make reads beyond the first read. Smaller stature for a quarterback. And again, the West Coast suits him because his strengths are in the short to intermediate passing game. In other words, there's a ton of limitations. Unlike what you did with the Bears and Caleb Williams, how about we actually force this guy to make some throws? Let's force him to make some big throws. Let's not play scared of this freaking team and give up underneath stuff, because Kyle Shanahan would love to do that, and Brandon Allen is really only capable of doing that. Just a thought. Do whatever you want, That's your call. Rushing, we interestingly looked at this a little bit with Christian McCaffrey not really being that dude yet. He's played through 2 games so far this year. Of course, people always get upset when I say stuff like this because it's like, oh, shut up. Christian McCaffrey's elite. Mike, whatever his name is, our head coach, Matt LaFleur, said he's so good. And Listen, Christian McCaffrey's incredibly good. He always has been and all that stuff. I'm just saying, up to this point, he has not looked like Christian McCaffrey. Every single stat has shown that he's not quite even as good as a lot of the other running backs on his own team. But now that he is back, he's getting like all the snaps. Everybody else is getting maybe 2 carries in the game. So Christian McCaffrey's the guy we got to focus on, right? Christian McCaffrey, right now, in the last 2 weeks, the only 2 weeks that he's played this year, has a 68.5 rushing grade. He has run 118 yards on 32 carries, which is just 3.7 yards per attempt. He has 2.5 yards after contact and 2 missed tackles forced. Now, to be clear, the game against Seattle was better than the game against Tampa. In other words, he got better after that first week. He went from 3 yards per attempt to 4.2, which is still not necessarily elite, but it's better than 3. He has 0 touchdowns through that time. His rush grade went from a 61 to a 71. His yards after contact went from 2.08 to 2.8, and he had 0 missed tackles forced against Tampa, 2 against Seattle. But even still, Week 11 Seattle version of Christian McCaffrey is not like a 90 overall, scary, terrifying guy that we're used to seeing. We'll get to the receiving in a minute, but just as far as the rushing is concerned, let me put it this way. I know McCaffrey's a freak, and if he goes off against the Packers, would I be shocked? Of course I wouldn't, because I would watch it and just go, oh, freaking of course. Of course that would happen. I'm just explaining to you what is. In fact, if we just look at his grade right now, 68.5 rushing grade. Last year, it was a 90. Okay? Granted, that was the best of his entire career at a 90. Of course, this goes to San Francisco and blows up. The year before that was also it was his second best. He spent half the year in Carolina, half in San Francisco, so that's probably why. It's been great for him in San Francisco. It also makes sense because the guy's returning from injury, and not just some random injury like, a broken rib or something. It's, what the heck was it? It was bilateral Achilles tendinitis, condition that affected both of his Achilles tendons, causing inflammation which can lead to pain and limited mobility. Couple little pointers on that. Players might experience a dip in performance due to cautious play to avoid re-injury, pain during high-intensive activities, or simply because the tendon isn't functioning at 100%. This could manifest as slower sprint times, less explosive movements, and reduced endurance. Look, the guy's 28 years old, right? He has 1,434 rushing attempts under his belt as a 5'11", 205-pound running back. He's coming off an injury that sidelined him for the entire year, basically. I'm just saying it wouldn't be that revolutionary if he went from being elite to good. That's all I'm saying, all right? I don't want to rock the boat here. I know people get mad when I do that. You know what you're talking about. He's elite. He's got a 90 grade on Madden. Yeah, okay. Again, don't really need to worry about a lot of these other guys. I looked at their snap counts since McCaffrey came back. The highest of the running backs was 2. So McCaffrey is the focal point of the running game, and that's what it is. Now, again, if he takes another step like he did from week 1 to week 2, or 10 to 11 to 12, he's right back into being a great running back. But hopefully, older, injured, slower. Hopefully, we can manage that a little bit. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Looking at the receivers, there's a lot of guys that do catch passes for the 49ers, not surprisingly. So let's run through real quick, just without regard to whether they're playing or not. The grades. George Kittle is the highest graded. He is returning. 91 receiving grade. Juwan Jennings, 88. Deebo Samuel, 79. You might remember this. We kind of went through some of this, but Christian McCaffrey, 76. That's also part of what makes him a little bit scary. Brandon Ayuk, 74. Jacob Cowing is the guy that, remember, is going to be out with a concussion. He is not a big part of their offense, but 74 PFF grade. Patrick Taylor, then 68. Ricky Pearsall, 62. Jordan Mason, 54. Saubert, 53. Kyle Juszczyk, 53. Not maybe the guy he used to be. Chris Conley, 47. Ronnie Bell, 46. Isaac Guerrero, 30. 29.7, actually. As far as their actual targets to kind of determine who their top receivers are, as I said, Juwan Jennings has been their top guy this year. He has actually had more targets even than George Kittle for the exact same amount of games played. So these are the top 2 guys, Juwan Jennings and George Kittle. They're the top 2 in targets. They are the top 2 in receptions. They are the top 2 in yards. They're the top 2 in receiving grades. They're the top 2 in touchdowns. They account for a massive percentage of the total offensive production. If you add in Deebo Samuel, you've pretty much got the entire offense. There's only one other touchdown that was scored, and that's Ricky Pearsall. As far as yards go, the only one that actually matters is Brandon Ayuk, who is out with a season-ending injury. So this is it. Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Juwan Jennings are going to be your top targets, and that's enough. You don't need more than those 3. As far as, let's start with George Kittle. The only thing we can hope with George Kittle is that he's dealing with some effects from his injury, because he is just, when I talk about consistency and guys that are elite, this guy had a little bit of a rough game week 1, 61 grade against the Giants. After that was 77, 80, 72, 80, 86, 90, and 83. I mean, you want like elite players. This is an elite player, like an actual elite player. Not only is he good, but he's good almost all the time. His worst game in terms of receptions is 3. His worst game in terms of yards is 40. He has only had 2 games where he didn't score a touchdown. He has a 75% contested catch rate. He's 9 of 12. He has just 1 drop on the entire season. Again, I don't know what you do to stop a guy like George Kittle. Best case scenario, we're talking like 3 receptions, 40 yards, no touchdowns. I mean, that would be like the worst game he's had all year. And again, the only thing we can hope is at 31 years old, that hamstring's kind of acting up, and he just kind of forced his way back in a little bit early and doesn't quite have the juice. But given our linebacker situation and the safeties not playing as well as they had been, it's going to be real tough to stop George Kittle. As far as Juwan Jennings, the number 1 wide receiver, 27 years old, 6'3", 212, big freaking guy, 7th-round pick back in 2020. I think I mentioned before, he runs like a 4.7, so I really like Juwan Jennings because he's kind of a throwback. He's one of those guys that It's hard to find these days. Everybody runs a 4.3 or, maybe a 4.4, but you're kind of slow if you're running in the 4.4s. This is one of those guys that, I don't know, say 10 years ago, they run a 4.6, but they're just clean route runners. He's kind of come up the right way. His grades over 4 years with the 49ers, 66, 68, 74, and this year 87. Relatively consistent, but he does have some bad days mixed in. 70, 60, 90, 80, 50, 60, 70, 80. That is to say he's got 5 good or better games, 3 average or less games. Of his good games, 3 of them are 80 or higher, and he has 1 game in the 90s. His worst game was Arizona, 4 targets, 1 reception, 13 yards. Not a huge touchdown guy. He does have 4, but that only came in 2 games, which is to say every other game he has had no touchdowns. I do kind of hope that not having Purdy is going to help, because you have to assume with a guy like Juwan Jennings, I would assume there's a lot of timing. There's a lot of, he doesn't have a lot of speed, so any ability for him to use his route running to get separation, that gap is going to close. So for him, it's a matter of you got to be able to hit him when he's open. And if you throw late, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. So I'm hoping in that scenario, even if he's able to kind of shake free from some of our DBs, if the quarterback sees it late, throws it late, it's either a pick or he decides to come off it because he saw it too late or whatever. That could end up hurting a guy like Juwan Jennings. Just theorizing here, but I don't really know. Then you got Debo, which I think, if I were a betting man, this is the guy they're going to want to target constantly. Why? Because if your plan is to get the ball out of your hands as quickly as possible and hope for some yards after catch, you want to give it to Debo. Whether that's behind the line of scrimmage or just very slightly past the line of scrimmage, that would at least be my first thought. The unfortunate thing for the Packers is they can't do what they did last week. The Bears did a lot of that last week. They have very big receivers in Chicago, and they dumped it off to these very big receivers, and we played scared and weren't able to bring them down. If you do that with Deebo Samuel, he's going to run all over you. You have to rally to Deebo, and you have to bring him down, and you have to hit him very physically, and you got to be fundamentally sound. None of this throwing shoulders crap. None of this like standing there going, ooh. You got to get there fast, wrap them up, and drive through them. That's what you have to do. Now, the somewhat good news is Deebo's been pretty inconsistent this year. As far as his grades go, it's not all that different. I mean, from year to year. But just running through it real quick, 70, 80, 60, 50, 70, 50, 70, 60, 50. So since week 4, he's had 2 good games. That's where they're at right now with Deebo. So remember, Deebo did have some problems. He had like real serious issue with fluid in his lungs and all that stuff. I'm guessing he's perfectly fine now. I don't know, but he had 2 good games in a row, weeks 1 and 2, missed week 3, and since then it's been real spotty with, again, only 2 really good games. Now, you could argue that from the statistical standpoint, but as far as grades are concerned, that's kind of the way that they viewed it. And then finally for the offense, obviously, really big deal here, Trent Williams. As of right now, Trent Williams will be playing. However, he is questionable, and he did not play all week. He has an ankle injury. Let's see. I'm just curious here. Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Probably had a bye week 9 and then 10, 11. So he has not missed a game. It is worth noting, Trent Williams, really good football player. Around week 7, something happened. And again, like, you can tell the 49ers something's not clicking. You can even say week 6. So just real quick, Trent Williams is one of those guys that doesn't have bad days. Weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, his run blocking and pass blocking grades were 70s or higher. Most of them were 80s. Week 6, 85 pass blocking, 61 run blocking. Yeah, whatever. People have bad days. It happens. Okay. The next week, 75 pass blocking, 54 run blocking. So not only did it happen again, but both of them went down 10 points. Went from an 85 to a 75 pass blocking, went from a 61 to a 54 run blocking. Had a 55 overall grade. Next week, 86 pass blocking, 52 run blocking. What the heck is going on? Weird, right? Then he has his bye week. His body has a chance to kind of heal a little bit. Comes back week 10, what happens? 78 pass blocking, 79 run blocking. Boom, he's back. Week 11, 64 pass blocking. First game all year, he didn't have a good pass blocking game. And 68 run blocking. So he has had one good game as a run blocker since week 6. And he has had his first bad pass blocking game this past week. I have to assume at 36 years old, a 320-pound human being, that's going to take its toll on your body. This guy has an ankle injury and has not been able to play all week. Listen, I'm just going to be I'm clearly a biased Packer fan. They need to sit him. His body's breaking down. His body is not holding up very well at all. You can see that very clearly by looking at how he's been performing this year. You got this 36-year-old who had his first game last week without a 70 run blocking or pass blocking grade. He has an ankle injury. He hasn't practiced all week. He needs to rest. Now, I guess the good news is if they do play him, he's probably not going to be full strength. He's not going to be the Trent Williams that everybody knows and loves. He's going to be the Trent Williams of Seattle, who had a 68 run blocking and 64 pass blocking. This is like Sean Ryan numbers. Even that might even be a little offensive to Sean Ryan because he's been better at pass blocking than that. I genuinely think there's a decent chance he does not play. First of all, not practicing all week usually means you don't play. But you got a 320-pound guy with an ankle injury. How likely is it that his ankle is going to get better? Bottom line is he wasn't good enough to practice. They're just hoping something magical happens by Saturday or Sunday. Because if the game was Friday or even probably Saturday, he'd have been shut down. Here's the other side of that coin, though. Or not other side of the coin, but this is where it gets pretty serious to where they definitely don't want that to happen. The only other guy that's taken left tackle snaps, or 14 snaps taken. I don't know that this would be the guy that takes over, but Jalen Moore. Jalen Moore in those 14 snaps gave up one hit, which is pretty rough. He had a 45 run blocking grade and a 56 pass blocking grade. Now that's a little bit lower than his usual self, but he is a 50 to 60 pass blocker and a 60 run blocker as far as grades. That's where he is. This is a bad left tackle. So you're going from a really good one, although potentially injured and hopefully not at full strength, or Jalen Moore, who's just a bad left tackle. That's a big deal, what happens to Trent Williams. Now, because I have no idea where he actually plays, I want to bring up John Feliciano. I don't actually know the situation with Feliciano because he hasn't played at all this year. He is questionable to play. I don't know if there's a chance that they put him in if he's cleared, or if it doesn't matter if you're cleared, that just means you're going to be a backup. I'm not entirely sure. Again, because he hasn't played this entire year. On top of that, they've had decent guard play from the guys that have been there. So I don't know if that moves the needle or not, whether or not he plays. Let's just assume it doesn't, and we know who the guards are. At left guard, they have Aaron Banks, 64 pass blocking, 71 run blocking. Now, it's very similar to the whole Bears offensive line thing. They got good run blockers, but these are pass blockers that you should be able to do something about. Also, we talked about Jake Brendel. I mentioned this guy already. I told you, even early in the year, 49ers fans were freaking out, saying this is the worst guy they've ever seen in their life. It's pathetic. It's a joke what this guy is doing. He hasn't given up a single sack, somehow. Maybe that's a Brock Purdy thing, I don't know. But he has a 44 pass blocking grade and a 71 run blocking grade. 44. He's given up 2 hits, 14 hurries, 16 total pressures, and he has 6 penalties, which leads the offensive line. At right guard, they got a pretty solid guy here in Dominic Purdy. He's actually a 3rd-round pick this year, so you may remember his name. Ends up being a really good pickup. He has a 72 pass blocking grade and a 78 run blocking grade. So for those of you draft nicks who are real big on the Kansas Jayhawk, Mr. Purdy, you may have been onto something because he's been off to a great start. At right tackle, they got Mr. Colton McKivitz. He has a 67 pass blocking, 75 run blocking. So again, pretty much across the board, they're good run blockers. There is not a single guy that doesn't have a good run blocking grade. How many guys don't have good pass blocking grades? Aaron Banks, the left guard, Jake Brendel, the center, and Colt McKivitz, the right tackle. Right tackle, Rashawn. Right tackle. I've been pumping you up, dog. I've been telling people he's back, all right? Don't make me apologize for saying that. Hey. All right. Why don't we go ahead and take a break, come back and look at the 49ers defense, as well as kind of looking at some of these guys that are hurt or whatever to see what their impact is/was. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. All righty then. So let's get started looking at the defense, starting with the interior. First of all, DT number 1 is Malik Collins. Again, we kind of touched on a couple of these things already because I wanted to go through some of their grade, whatever. But you know what? We're going through it again a little bit more in depth. Plus, again, we got to go through the injuries. So Malik Collins is a top dude. 57 grade, 44 run defense, 36 tackling, 66 pass rush. Now, again, the stats, as we talked about, are there. 30 of 284, that's above 10%, 5 sacks, whatever. But he grades out terribly, and he's not a good run defender. Folks, pay attention. Remember when the Bears had a bad run defense? Remember that whole thing? Just saying, there's opportunities here. After that is Jordan Elliott, 56 grade, 64 run defense, 46 tackling, 50 pass rush. This guy has 3 pressures on 119 attempts. That's about as bad as anybody in the world. Third is Kevin Givens. Kevin Givens is out in this game. Kevin Givens, 11 pressures on 108 attempts, so he's one of those guys that's above 10%. Run defense is putrid, but he's got some pass rush ability, which means we have to go down to Kalia Davis. Kalia Davis has a 48 PFF grade, 43 run defense, 51 pass rush, and 0 pressures on 56 attempts. That's 0. They would have had a guy by the name of Javon Hargrave. Javon Hargrave suffered a partially torn right tricep. He is believed to be done for the year, so he is not going to be able to spell this unit. There is a guy by the name of Evan Anderson, who is an undrafted free agent out of the Florida Atlantic Owls this year. He's actually grading out quite well, but that's because he kind of blew up his first 2 games. And then it's one of those things we deal with all the time as Packer fans. I've been talking about consistency like crazy. They blow up like Evan Williams, and you're like, oh my Lord, we have this elite player. I can't believe it. And then it just falls apart. So Evan Anderson here, week 4, he comes in, plays 19 snaps, has a 76 grade, an 87 pass rush grade, 2 pressures and a sack on 10 attempts. Like, holy crap, what is that? Okay, let's try it again. Week 6, he comes back, 13 snaps, 93 PFF grade, 85 run defense, 92 pass rush, 2 pressures on 4 attempts. This guy's a freak. We got the greatest person in the human race. Let's do it again. Week 8, 14 snaps. Oh, geez, 2 weeks later, we've been begging for this guy. Why didn't you play him? This is just a terrible thing that you're doing. Week 8, 14 snaps. He has a 53 grade, 58 run defense, 53 pass rush, no pressures at all. Okay, let's try it again. Week 10, 15 snaps, bad grades, no pressures. Week 11, try it again. 11 snaps, bad grades, no pressures. He had 20 pass rush attempts in his last 3 games with 0 pressures. His last 3 games were 53, 46, and 43 were his grades. So if we see Evan Anderson, which we probably will be a little bit as sort of the DT4, I guess, it ain't great. Then we get to, obviously, the most important thing if we look at the edge situation. One of the biggest things about this whole thing is the fact of how many snaps this guy gets. It's not like in Green Bay where nobody really just stays on the field, that there's just this constant rotation, doesn't matter how good you are. No, this guy doesn't come off the field, basically. He's played 10 of 10 games. He's played 504 snaps. The next highest is Leonard Williams, who has played all 10 games, 390. He's played like 25-30% more snaps than the number 2 guy. Bosa, 90 PFF grade, 75 run defense, 87 pass rush, 52 pressures and 8 sacks on 320 attempts, is not in this game. Leonard Floyd will be edge number 1. Again, the numbers are there. 35 pressures, 7 sacks on 257 attempts, but the grades are putrid. 55 PFF grade, 56 run defense, 52 tackling, and 55 pass rush. That leaves like 3 other guys that might get rotated in that are going to have to step up a little bit, starting with Sam Okuyunonu, 2022 undrafted free agent out of Maryland. He has a 62 grade, 53 run defense, 67 pass rush, 18 pressures and 3 sacks on 140 attempts. The numbers are there. The problem is, very similar to Leonard Floyd, it's very spotty. For example, he has 5 pressures against Dallas. He also has one good game this entire year, and that was New England, 92 PFF grade. Otherwise, 60, 60, 60, 60, 40, 60, 50, 40. In fact, if you listen back, of the last 4 games, he has one average game. His highest in that stretch was 61. Otherwise, it was 43, 57, and this last week was a 44. So that's going to be presumably edge number 2. Then you got Yatur Gross-Matos, who's been dancing around for quite a while. He's a second-round pick. He spent some time in Carolina. Got picked up by San Francisco just this year. He has got a 57 grade, 45 run defense, 65 pass rush, 8 pressures and a sack on 73 attempts. So he's right at 10%, but he's whatever. He is, prior to this year, he would be Kingsley Enagbare. I can't say this year because nobody's at 10% anymore, but just to give you an idea, really bad grades, but he's still hovering around 10% as far as pressure rate goes. And then finally, you got Robert Beal. Robert Beal, 47 grade, 45 run defense, 29 tackling, 53 pass rush, 1 pressure on 37 attempts. If that guy hits our quarterback, we suck. Looking at linebacker again, they've got Tatum Bethune, who is out. Tatum Bethune, I don't believe, was going to have any real role. Maybe he's a special teamer. But as we mentioned before, Fred Warner, Devondre Campbell will be the linebackers. You couldn't have more polar opposites. Fred Warner is still freaking Fred Warner. 91 PFF grade, 79 run defense, 72 tackling, 92 coverage grade. Devondre Campbell is struggling. 56 grade, 54 run defense, 40 tackling, 54 pass rush, 58 coverage. Nothing is going well. Also should be noted, Fred Warner really hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been Fred Warner since week 4. So this is how he started the season. 93, 96, 72, 97. That's as elite of a start of anything that has ever happened ever. Since then, 54, 61, 65, 73, 69, 67. That is to say, since week 5, one good game, and that was against Dallas. Everybody had a good game against Dallas because it's freaking Dallas and they suck. But that's about it. So, let's just do this. For the season, Fred Warner is the highest by a mile graded linebacker. It's a comfortable margin. What happens if we remove the first 4 games of the season? Well, first of all, Eric Wilson becomes the 3rd highest graded linebacker. That should be noted. Edgerrin Cooper actually ranks 24th. Not in this game, unfortunately, but that is also a pretty solid note that we have 2 top 25 linebackers, neither of which are the number 1 linebacker on our team because we don't know what we're doing. Fred Warner is a little further down. He's 39th. He ranks 39th since week 5. So, again, if I say something bad about Fred Warner, he's not really having the best time recently. He's kind of struggling. Oh, how dare you? He's the greatest. Everybody knows. You're just being stupid. You focus on PF. Listen, it is what it is, man. Would I be shocked if he has a great game? Not really. Can I just point something out to you, though? There's a very distinct line between the first 4 weeks and after that. You know what else is really distinct that stands out? His snap counts in week 4. 51, 54, 57, 28, and then 58, 78, 70. It's really weird. Wonder why it was so low. Do you think maybe he got hurt? Why, yes, he did. Fred Warner sustained an ankle injury during the San Francisco 49ers Week 4 game against the New England Patriots. He left the game just before halftime and did not return for the second half. The injury was described as an ankle sprain and was listed as day-to-day following the game. The furthest test plan, blah, 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 blah. He got an ankle injury, has not been the same since. Since his ankle injury, he is the 39th. He's like a 40th ranked linebacker in the NFL since he had an ankle injury. Okay? All right. And it really, again, you look at the 49ers and you say they're so good, I don't understand. You can kind of look at a lot of different guys and see them start to break down. First of all, look at their team right now. Look how many injuries they have. Then they got a left tackle that's been playing, but clearly is playing hurt. They got a linebacker that's been playing, clearly has been playing hurt. They've had a lot of issues like this. Guys are not playing like themselves, and obviously losing your tight end for that brief period of time is going to hurt for at least that brief period of time. But there's more to it than just that. Devondre just has not been good. He did have his first good game against Seattle, so that should be noted. 71 grades, 70 run defense, 65 coverage, so well done, Devondre. And then at corner, Lenoir is their top corner in terms of how many snaps he's had so far. Charvarius Ward is actually number 2, even having played 7 snaps. Now remember, Charvarius Ward is out, so he will not be in this game. He's actually been out since week 8, and again, still has been the number 2 in terms of snap count. So he is clearly a starter, is the point that I'm making. After that, you have Isaac Yiadom and Renardo Green. So these are presumably your trio. You have Lenoir, who is going to be your slot corner. Again, I believe he just got paid. Isaac Yiadom is going to be your right cornerback primarily. Renardo Green, the left cornerback primarily. Is how they generally dice this up. All 3 of these guys are very Packerish in that, they show flashes. Renardo Green, it's 60, 40, 50, 60, 70, 60, 90, 80, 50. That's how a lot of guys are. Unfortunately, every Packer is this way, but a lot of guys are this way. And it's just a matter of whether you catch him on a bad day. Yiadom is a little bit worse, and especially since he hasn't had a good day since, as usual, week 5. But it's 70, 50, 60, 80, 70. That was his good stretch. Then it's been 50, 60, 50, 60, 50. Isaac Yiadom has not had a real solid performance. In fact, if you just look at his coverage grades, weeks 1, 4, and 5, and that's it. Those are the only good days that he's had. Similarly with Lenoir, just based on coverage, because he had one really good run defense game, his last actual 70 or higher game was week 5. You could probably round up the Kansas City game, but I'm not going to. Since week 5, 40, 60, 60, 60, 60. As far as I'm concerned, you got 3 average corners. That's it. It's like, well, they could have a good day. Yeah, so could Keyshawn. So could Valentine. So could, not Stokes. So could Bullard. Maybe. Probably not Bullard either. I don't frickin' know. Not Quay. So could Kingsley. All right? Kingsley could have his one good game of the year. You don't know. And then at safety, we have, just checking, making sure that they don't have any safeties out, Jair Brown and Malik Mustafa. Jair Brown, 3rd-round pick last year, had a really good year, kind of a setback this year. We've seen that with several people. I think we had that with Savage was even kind of that way, if I'm not mistaken. Stokes even had a pretty good rookie year and then fell off. But his 2023 season, 74, 73 run defense, 72 coverage. He's currently at a 65. He has had, let's just run through it real quick. 60-40, 70-70-40, 70-30, 80-60-70. So there's some good games mixed in. The problem is the bad games are really bad, right? It's low 70s and then 40, and then low 70s and then 40, and then 30. So he is subject to having some pretty bad games. Hopefully we can give him some fits here. Only one really good game as far as coverage. That was against, take a guess, Dallas. Malik Mustafa, 4th-round pick this year. Again, another guy the draftniks may remember. Real solid run defense so far. He is actually the free safety compared to Mr. Jair Brown, so despite what would make sense, really good run defense, tackling, whatever. Coverage, 58 grade. He has had 2 good games this year, week 6 against Seattle and week 10 against Tampa Bay. That's about it. Otherwise, it's 40s, 50s, and 60s for Mustafa. Bottom line, he's just a regular old dude, right? He's like everybody else. He's not really scary, could have a good day, you never know. So that's it. That is the San Francisco 49ers. Could take a look at their kicker if you want. It could be a little tricky because they've had 4 different people kick field goals. Who in the world is their freaking kicker right now? I know it's not Anders Carlson. They had him for a little bit. He is now, I believe, a Jet. They had their punter, Mitch Wishnowsky, kick at some point. Jake Moody presumably is their kicker because that's, but I don't know. Let's see. Wishnowsky was week 5. We'll get Anders Carlson out of here week 7 and 8. And then they had Matthew Wright week 6. Otherwise, we got Jake Moody. Jake Moody this year, he was a 3rd-round pick last year. He was very good. He had 97% of his extra points. He's actually at 100% this year. He was at 82% of his field goals. He's at 81 this year. For whatever reason, though, his grade has plummeted from a 72 to a 61. I'm guessing that has to do with missing easier field goals, but it's not. He missed 50-yarders. I don't know. PFF, weird grading freaking system. He's fine. He hasn't missed any extra points. He missed a couple 50-yarders. That's about it. He did have a bad day week 10 against Tampa. He was 3 for 6 on his field goals, and he missed 2 40-yard range field goals and 1 50-yarder. So that's a rough day at the office. That's pretty bad. Their punter, Mitch Wishnowsky, they also had Pat O'Donnell for 1 punt, so they're just borrowing some of our guys. He has a 65 punt grade for whatever that's worth. So bottom line, he's not this elite field flipper guy. He's just a dude. And listen, I don't know that they have a bunch of guys other than just dudes. I mean, they got Kittle, right? Purdy is not just a dude. He's not playing. Bosa is not just a dude. He's not playing. Outside of that, I mean, they got Kittle and guys with potential. Some of their wide receivers are quite good. If Trent Williams plays, he might be good. But guys, it's a beatable football team that is distraught, that is not playing well, that is not winning football games, that is losing their fan base, seemingly losing their locker room, completely distraught with injuries. I mean, if there was ever an opportunity to have a hated rival that has constantly not only beat you, but knocked you out of the playoffs, including last year, right in your crosshairs, walk into your house, completely demoralized, beat up, and just ripe for the picking, I'm very sorry to tell you this, Green Bay Packers, but any 7-win team in this situation should be able to pick this team off no problem. Okay? Bottom line. Said it last week, and you know what? I'll take it because you won. Wish it was a little better, but I told you, you have to be able to beat the Bears, and technically, you did. So you know what? I'll give you that again. You have to beat this team. Would I like it if you beat the living crap out of them because they don't even have a starting quarterback? Yeah, that would be preferable. But you know what? If you give me a freaking stroke watching this game, and if I have to come downstairs and start recording at halftime because I'm so pissed off, but you still end up winning, I'll take it. Just please win this game, okay? All right, I'm out of here. You guys have a good rest of your day, night, whatever. I will talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.